Was that a meeting or was that a meeting, y'all? Wow.
Whew, there's a lot to unpack there.
Ooh, do you need a sweat towel? Seems like everybody in Florida needs a sweat towel. Thank you, God, that we are not in Florida
No.
for many of reasons, as you've seen. I mean, several times throughout this meeting, I just looked over at Brett and said, whew, I'm so glad we don't live in Otter Creek. God is good. Thank you for getting us out of there.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean...
And we'll get to the Travis stuff at the end, but let's go through the whole meeting. But most of it will be about the Travis ordeal and the permitting process, and we can shed a lot of light on that you don't see in the meeting. So we will talk about that to an extent, because I can talk permits all day long. So we'll get to that. So what do you want to start us off? Who was at the meeting? Did Russell make the meeting?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I did notice, I checked the website earlier before the meeting, and I did see they actually finally put this agenda on the website, so that's awesome.
Yeah, so we did misspeak earlier on our live. We had checked that a couple days ago, but didn't check it today, and we had since checked it, so we misspoke during the live today, or when this was recorded, which will be yesterday. So the agenda was posted on the website, so
that's good.
We'll
They're
give 'em some thumbs
actually
up. Yeah.
making strides with that.
we give kudos.
So I'm glad to see that. They have a lot of work to do with that, and apparently a lot of work to do with many of things.
I have a couple questions about the new clerk that was obviously there. I think his name was Jason, was that right?
That's what I heard.
Okay, so we're reading the chat. A lot of information will come from the chat, and a lot will just come from what was said in the meeting. So it looks like this Jason clerk guy has some IT experience in terms of platforms and connectivity and all of that. So maybe he'll be working with the website and he'll be able to get stuff posted pretty quickly, where it was a challenge for others that worked around it before.
I was just blown away because I assumed, which you know how
Yeah.
assuming things can be pretty bad, but from what I knew of the past, the way they hired the clerks was that they were voted on at a meeting. So I pretty much thought that this meeting is where they would vote to hire a clerk. So I was kind of shocked to see that they had hired a clerk.
Because anything over $500, they're supposed to put that to a board vote. 500 or 1,000, I think they upped it. But
That's for purchases.
For purchases, but his salary should be voted on because that's an extensive.
I think that goes outside of purchases,
Okay.
though,
All right.
the way it was wrote. But anyway, the way they've always done it in the past, which doesn't mean it's right or anything like that, but the way I believe it is in the ordinances it was always done at a meeting and it was voted on.
Yeah.
So,
Russell,
and if they were going to
yeah.
go over the applications, they would have had to have workshops because all that sunshine law has to be done openly. So that's why when I was mayor, we were trying to have workshops to hire a new clerk, but no one ever showed up to the workshops. So,
But then they had to vote on it.
we couldn't really do anything. But yeah, it was voted on in a meeting with hiring Belinda and all these
Indiana.
things. So I was a bit shocked personally that they didn't do that at a meeting, unless they had some surprise meeting that nobody's talking about.
Right. Yeah.
But I think they would be talking about that, right?
Because they were piling on Russell for hiring, was it Angela, and the other lady that he hired didn't come before the board. That was a big thing about that.
Right.
So begs the
interesting.
question. Interesting.
I know a lot of people in the chat were comparing Zim to Russell and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just saying that's awful odd.
We even saw Zim Meeks in the chat.
I mean,
it's kind of funny.
It's super great to have a clerk. They absolutely need a clerk.
Yes.
I'm not knocking any of that. And it's really great if he does have some IT experience so he can help bring them into the
20th century.
right century here with
Yeah.
maybe eventually having some microphones where you can hear people.
Yeah.
Because that building is awful
The
echoey.
acoustics are terrible. So
it always has been.
It's not Travis's fault with the microphone.
No, absolutely not.
It's the repercussion of the voice off the walls. It just muffles everything.
Well, everybody should know that anyway, because when the microphones were used at the table, people could hear the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody should know that if you remember and go back to old times.
Right.
That it is the room and you need to use the proper equipment. So it is super hard to hear outside of that. But, you know, I'm glad to see there's a clerk. Hoping he does a fabulous job. I'm thankful that Belinda got everything straight in there so he's not walking into the huge mess that we all walked into.
True, he's starting with a clean slate.
Those things are super great. I was just a little shocked because they didn't do it at the meeting. So,
yeah.
But hey, is what it is, right?
There's a new king in town. Yeah, it's a new way of doing things.
The new king. So let's see what else.
Well, Laura was early to
Yeah.
the meeting.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a shocker.
Yeah.
I thought for sure when I saw her there early and Dawn walking up that Russell would have been there.
Yeah.
But guess who wasn't there?
Russell.
No. So how many meetings is that now he's missed since he's been voted in? That's
2.
The second one?
And I don't know how it works technically,
But
but he has not yet been sworn in. Not in a meeting anyway. Now, he could have went to the county and got sworn in.
was he at the April meeting?
I don't know.
I mean, that's not where they would swear him in anyway, but because they do it in May for some odd reason. So
Right.
it's been 2 meetings that he would have been sworn in that he missed, because I know a lot of people in the chat were saying, isn't it after 3 you're out? But that would have been the second one.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume if he's not at the next one, they'll go through the process of filling the vacant seat.
Yes, and that's done by letter of interest. It doesn't automatically put Don in that seat just
No.
because he wants it.
It doesn't put Dawn or Lynette in that seat.
No. They would submit letters of interest, and the board votes on it. Let's say only Don and Lynette put in a letter of interest, and that's all they get. The board doesn't have to pick one or the other. They can pick nobody. They can decide to leave the seat vacant. They don't have to fill it. So there's a big difference too. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Yeah, and it's a process anyway. So let's say they wait another month and then they announce at the next meeting after that they're going to do letters of interest.
So now
And
you're
then-
on the 5th month before you actually get anybody in the seat.
And then the one after that is where they would vote. And then before you know it, there's already another election. So
Yeah.
kind of what's the point, right?
And it's the cycle that always repeats itself.
And that seat would just be till the next election, because anytime that
Right.
happens, you're just doing the year part of that term. You don't get
Right.
the whole 2-year
Correct.
seat.
Just like Rex did. He had
And
to
that's
run for his seat.
Why
Now he's
people
got
were
2 years.
asking about Carl and why he needed to be voted in again. He was just filling a 1-year seat at that time.
Someone else's seat. Right.
So that's why he needed to be voted in. He was not at this meeting. I'm not really sure why. Hopefully
He
everything.
works too.
Yeah, he
works.
does.
He works.
So hopefully he's well and the family's well and there's no big emergency. So, I mean, for him to miss a meeting, I'm sure either he had to go to work for emergency or maybe he's just under the weather. And again, I know a lot of people in the chat were saying stuff about prayers for Belinda and for Belinda's husband, Doug,
Yeah.
because he's going through a lot of medical issues. I don't know all the details of those issues, but please keep them in your prayers.
Yep.
I know it's very hard, especially when you get older, and I know they've been married for a long time, and when your spouse is not doing well, that also weighs on you.
It does.
So Belinda can use your prayers as well as Doug, and we appreciate that. So what else?
Don was in the audience, if we didn't mention that.
He didn't even say anything, so
Yeah, he wasn't interrupted.
odd.
Tammy Jones was one of the guest speakers, as well as the Wakasasa Waste and Water Management District lady. Now, I couldn't understand anything what she was saying.
No, it was so hard to hear, and she was talking really fast because I'm sure she wanted to get out of there and get home and have some dinner or something.
Mm-hmm. So
Who wants to hang out in a town meeting if you don't have to?
It's routine that they let the guest speakers go first so they can head on about their business. But it sounded like to me they're going to have to raise some money. The town of Otter Creek is going to have to raise some money to help support this new water management system. I believe they're trying to put the water treatment plant in Otter Creek. I don't know if that's in total correct, if that's all the right information, but we have heard that, I think, before, and I think I heard it again tonight. Again, it was really hard to hear what she was saying. So the town, though, inevitably is going to have to find a way to raise more money. So probably water bills going up, taxes going up. I mean, I would think, as long as you stay incorporated. Now, guess what? You unincorporate, county absorbs it. And water treatment, I believe, is state ran. The septics are all state. The permits for septic tanks are all state. So I would assume that the water treatment plants are state. Could be wrong, could be misspeaking, but they're going to have to raise money either way. They got things they want. You're going to have to pay for them. They're going to have to raise money. So I don't know. Unincorporate. I'm saying that was always the best deal for the town, but the town doesn't seem to get it. So.
And then Tammy Jones, she's the supervisor of elections for Levy County. She's super helpful, very knowledgeable.
Yes.
I'm glad that she came out to speak herself because she does a lot of work for the county, and she's a person who cares.
She's good people. Yep.
So I was glad to see her there. Again, it was a little bit hard to hear some of what she was saying, but it sounds like they would like to take over doing the elections for all the small municipalities in Levy County, because you've got all the surrounding cities, English, Yankeetown, there's a bunch of little towns in Levy County. And to use their equipment, it does cost more money. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to think, with so few votes to count, why you would pay that extra money and not just keep the paper ballot, especially when that town
needs money,
has problems with money, and they have to fundraise for so many different things. But it sounded like also she was saying if they changed the dates for the elections, that they could piggyback on the other elections going on within the county and possibly the state, to where they wouldn't be paying those high expenses. Now, I couldn't hear everything in full detail, just like y'all, so I don't know if that would be the be-all, end-all of the plan. And I don't know. I know that it would take a load off the clerk to not have to do the election stuff. They would still do the qualifying. I know the votes would be counted fast and the results would be fast, but I didn't think they
I don't know if that's worth the
took that long
$550
in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth that.
But I do know that there's some people on the board that love to spend money and don't really care about those things. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go with that. Personally, I would opt not to do that because I think it's an unnecessary expense.
Yeah.
However, if it is true that you could piggyback off of the other elections and not have to pay the expense, then I would just opt to change the dates of the election and do that, because that's what makes sense. Yeah. Then it would give the clerk less work to do, so I wouldn't have to pay the clerk as much money coming out of the town's budget. See, you got to think of those things too. So you could save some money that way. So I would definitely look into that more, and I would change the dates if that were the case.
Yeah, that's an easy.
Because it would make everything easier. Tammy and her team have everything fine-tuned. They do a great job. You can trust them, and it would go smooth.
Now, if we were a bigger town, let's say like maybe Chiefland, that's a sizable town to count a bunch of ballots. So I would see that they would have a budget to get these machines. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer. But a town of 100 people, and not all of them vote. 77 voted last time. And that's a big turnout. So you're not going to be counting more than 80 votes. You can do that in a few minutes. So I don't think it justifies the expense. But again, we'll wait and see what they do.
Well, they don't do it in a few minutes.
Well, no, they don't.
But even so.
Right. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I just figured I'd give you a little.
Give me a poke. Yeah, you keep me in line now.
But and there was not too many people in the audience. I didn't see the Hudson sisters.
Nope.
I didn't see Gail. I didn't even see Joy or Ellie or Scott.
And this goes to our point that most of the town doesn't really care about what happens in these meetings. They don't show up to them. There might have been, Belinda was there, and there was one other lady I didn't really recognize, but she might have been a resident. And that was it, based on what we could see in the camera.
Which to me is another huge reason why they should be streaming these meetings, so at least the town is informed of what's going on.
Yeah.
I know they should get there and all those things, but in a perfect world, everybody in the town would attend the meeting and everybody would be involved and everything would just be wonderful.
Right.
But we do not live in a perfect world. So it would appear to me that streaming the meetings is absolutely necessary.
Maybe this new clerk can get that going.
Yeah, I hope so. Because personally for me, especially when I was mayor, you want the people to attend. You want their feedback. I encouraged people to talk, to come outside of the meetings, visit town hall, get your questions answered, submit ideas for what we can do to improve stuff. That is wonderful. It's what you want. But it seems to me that other people on the board in mayor seats don't want that. They're not encouraging talking. They're not encouraging good growth in the town, guided growth, as I like to call it. They're not encouraging any of those things. And it would appear that some people only like the cameras when it benefits them. And if it doesn't benefit them, they'd rather not have the cameras in there, which I think is terrible. I'm not going to go around bashing a bunch of people, but there are things I see that I don't think are okay. I don't think it's okay to not allow people to speak
about anything they
about
want.
anything.
Except a water bill. That's private.
I don't understand that at all. I encourage that. I don't think you should be in those seats just to serve yourself or for your best interest. I think you are there to represent the people in the town, to be the voice for them. So I'm a little saddened that things have gone in that direction. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you ready to move into the big drama of the meeting?
The big reveal? Okay.
Oh my goodness. I personally was shocked. And I know the chat was flying and going crazy, so everybody was pretty upset about what happened in the meeting.
Okay, so let's set the table for this whole permitting process. Do you remember when you were on the board, they had just terminated the interlocal agreement? Do you remember that? And then Zim actually terminated it 2 weeks earlier than he should have terminated it.
See, originally, let's step back a little bit more.
Okay.
So originally the permitting was done in the county, and you had to go to Otter Creek to see the clerk to get the zoning compliance letter.
Correct.
It was just pretty much a vague letter that didn't really say as much as it should have.
Right.
There should have been a lot more specifics written in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a form that they cut and pasted from somewhere else and never tailored it to the town, which they did quite often with many forms. And you would take that zoning compliance letter, which I think it costed somewhere between $1 and $3 roughly. and you would take that over to the county building department, and there you would get your permits. They would do the inspections. All that came out of that office.
And they were easy to work with.
It was very easy to do.
Yep.
And they oversaw this for a lot of the small towns in Levy County.
Because it's very expensive to stand up a permit, and in zoning enforcement, which they still don't have a zoning enforcement official.
I'm sure they don't.
They still don't have a building
Well,
official.
supposedly they do. Out of Cedar Key that they use on a, remember?
Yeah, and I believe they read an ordinance on it, but I still don't understand how that really works and who pays for that.
So anyway, Levy County decided that it was too much of a hassle and too much of an expense, and they didn't want to deal with it anymore. So they had put out a notice while Russell was mayor that they were going to be terminating this agreement with Otter Creek. There was a few other small towns they were terminating their agreements with as well. Well, it was never even brought up in any of the meetings to inform any of the people in the town that this change was taking place. Meanwhile, they went ahead and hired Albert Fuller to do the permitting, or I don't know exactly what his title was at that time, but it was just a big...
He's not a permit guy. He's a zoning compliance guy.
It was just a big mess.
Yeah.
And they didn't hire him properly.
Correct.
And they were wasting town money.
Yep.
And all these other things. But they had done that, hiring him before. They were doing it in preparation for getting dropped from the county, but they did it all undercover and totally wrong.
And they didn't pass any ordinances stating that this was the new law.
Right.
And
so
that's what you're going to run into here. I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
At the time that you're going to be changing all these procedures, now all of a sudden you need a plan wrote up, you need ordinances, you need the way you're going to follow stuff and the steps, and all that needs to be written out. Well, no one ever did that. They just hired Albert and just started doing stuff like denying us to move forward with doing stuff in the campground. They were doing a bunch of illegal stuff to shut everybody down.
Right.
Because they didn't want anybody building anything in the town, and they didn't want any growth, and they just wanted to shut everything down, and they were doing it illegally because they figured nobody could afford to hire a lawyer to sue them when they were doing the things they shouldn't be.
Correct.
So, oh my goodness.
I know
It
it's
just
a
brings
lot.
back so many
Yeah.
so many terrible memories, and the anxiety builds up. Like watching this meeting, it gets me so riled up and I'm like, why do I have to keep watching these? You know, it's very upsetting, and I want good things for the town, but it bothers me so much that it seems like stuff is going backwards again.
So
I've gotten a little off track, so you got to reel me back in here and there. So now we come to where you were talking about that when I was sitting in the seat, we're getting these letters that this is being canceled. This is the second, third, I don't know how many notices, and this was news to us because Russell never announced it to the town.
no.
So nobody knew anything, and I was like, oh boy, this is like pretty serious because all these big things have to take place. So I had gone out of town and went to Ohio to visit family. While I was in Ohio, Zim, who was the vice mayor at the time, took it upon himself to get with the clerk and type up a letter to send to the county to terminate it a couple of weeks early, which didn't make any sense.
Didn't make any sense.
Because there was no plan in play for going forward and what needed to be done. So why would you even cancel it early? And there was several permits that the county was holding at that time. And I do believe the county said, do you want these permits back or should we keep them? And the decision was made that the county could keep those permits. I was out of town, so I was not part of it at all. Nobody called me and asked about any of this, so I was totally out of the loop. And when I got back into town, I found all this out, and I was a little miffed about it. because that's just not right.
Yeah,
I'm all about transparency, and I specifically make myself available. I have a cell phone. I don't know why I wasn't notified of that, but
I think he later apologized to you for that, but what was done was done.
the biggest thing is I don't know what the point of it all was.
Yeah, I don't know what the point was. It ended by itself in 2 weeks anyway.
Right. So
It didn't do anything.
yeah, I mean, it was dumb to end it early, but essentially it made no difference
It made no
because
difference.
it was ending anyway, and there needed to be a plan in place. So
When the interlocal agreement ended, the towns were responsible for standing up their own permitting office or building official or whatever you want to call it.
all of that.
So when you're doing that, you have to make up the rules, but you can't just make them up off the cuff of your head. And that's where I would say, Travis, you need to question that. Maybe not on camera, but go in the office or talk to Zim and say, okay, if you have these new rules for these permits, where do you have that written?
All that should be wrote up
It should
in the
all
ordinance,
be in an ordinance,
public records request, that you can read all that.
You can't just make it up. Russell tried to do that to me, and I questioned him on it, and I called him on it. But you have to have an ordinance to back up your new changes to law. So if now the law requires engineered drawings, let's say, well, let me tell you, first off, that's above and beyond what the county ever needed. We had to provide drawings, and we did it on graph paper to scale. It didn't have to be perfect. It needed to be legible, everything labeled, and to scale the best you could. And I thought his drawings were pretty good. Now, he didn't have measurements on them, but he could get that easily. But engineered drawings, if Zim's requiring engineered drawings, that's a huge obstacle. It could cost $10,000, it could cost $30,000 to get engineered drawings.
I will say that Levy County also changed their policies on those things too. So you're speaking of
when we were there.
When we were there.
Okay.
But Levy County also changed their policies, because even though Levy County is larger than Otter Creek and has been doing these businesses for longer, they were still doing things
the old way,
not like the bigger cities. Now, are all these things completely wrong? Not necessarily, but cities and towns are businesses, and government stuff, it's all about the revenue and the money they can be making. So while a lot of things are ridiculous and overpriced, and it always seems like you don't really own anything, this is the way things are being run. So the bigger cities are telling these smaller towns, you need to step up your game and get into the big times and start charging the big monies. And I mean, if people are doing things correctly and by the code and passing inspections, I personally don't see why you need that detailed of engineered drawings for these projects. But I'm not in charge, and I didn't pass these new rules and ordinances, nor have I even seen what they have passed. So that would be a good thing to get in the public records request to read it through.
I would start with that, because I can almost guarantee you they don't have any ordinances on new construction.
I know a lot of things changed very recently in Levy County and in the town of Otter Creek, and I have not seen those changes, so I can't speak about them. And I know everybody was super upset with Zim for the way he spoke to Travis, which I agree. He didn't take the right tone, and he shut him down, which reminded me a lot of what Russell Meeks would do
very familiar
in meetings when he didn't like the questioning and he was just done talking to you. And I personally don't like that, because I don't think you should shut people down. I don't think you should get a tone like that with them. You should inform them and help them and guide them in the right way. And if Travis went in there ahead of time and had a conversation with Zim, I think Zim should have used detailed verbiage of what exactly he needed, because that is a complaint I've had, is you should be able to walk into your town and get with the clerk and then say, this is what you need to do step by step by step.
It should be on a sheet of paper.
Right. It should be all laid out for you, and they should be there to explain it to you. It shouldn't be this big mystery.
No.
Because you should want a good guided growth in your town, and you want happy citizens in your town.
I do feel Travis's pain. Zim, this is kind of Zim, and we don't attack him. He's fine. If he's making new rules in the town, he's the mayor and he's put it before the board. They voted and he got ordinances to back it up. Then that's their decision. The town has voted, and that's their choice. If they want engineered drawings, then that's what you're going to have to produce. So he's not wrong on that point. The part where we don't like is that he didn't outline everything for Travis. He didn't tell Travis, okay, you're going to need a permit for this and a permit for that and a permit for this, and he didn't lay it out. He gave him just a little bit of it. And now he's going to have to go get that, come back, and then Zim will feed him another little piece he needs. I understand Travis's contention in the fact that, why didn't he tell me this a month ago? This is the thing about Zim. He's strong-headed, and he hoards information. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he understands system, and he's a building contractor, and he understands codes and permitting. He does. He's a good guy to have on the board. But he hoards information. You have to pull it out of him. And then when you do get the information, you need to go verify it, because he may only give you part of it. He doesn't give you all of it. So that's the only thing with him. So I always had to go and get information from the actual county. I would ask Zim something. He wasn't in a position of power at that point. I would ask him information, and then I would go to the county and find out something totally different. So we didn't have to do engineered drawings. Now you do. And if the town is requiring it, then they need to provide the ordinance that shows that they're requiring it, not just Zim saying
I mean,
something.
it's true. You can't do favoritism, because that would be doing shady practice.
Right.
And I can tell you for sure that I know everybody's questioning, did Zim do all these things for his RV park? They want to see all the paperwork. Well, I know for sure that Russell was calling every agency he could and constantly sending people over to the property while Zim was building. So I would be absolutely shocked if Zim did anything shady there and everything wasn't fully on board the way it should have been. He did spend a lot of money getting his park going. So I would be completely shocked if everything is not on board there.
I think he had to get some retention ponds engineered, drawn out. And I believe between them and water management, and the engineers had to keep going back and redrafting the drawings. But at one point he was telling me that he was $30,000 into it with the engineers, and they weren't finished. So
he went through a lot of process, and a lot of agencies Russell kept throwing at him and trying to make everything very difficult
and expensive.
So I don't think anything's going to come out shady there where it wasn't done properly.
Yeah.
So I know everybody is upset at the way he was talking to Travis and his tone and all that, and I absolutely get that. I don't think you should do that, especially when you're in those positions. You should be encouraging people, you should be educating them,
and
you should be guiding them.
He didn't really help him at all.
Yeah. So
he just threw an obstacle in front of him and said, here, you figure it out.
I personally don't agree with that. When I was in that seat, I wanted everything to be transparent. I wanted everybody in the community to speak up, be on board, work together. And yes, I did point out the shady things that were happening and have happened in the past, because I don't think that's right. I don't think you should be in those seats with agendas and be running anything for your own gain. I think it should be for the whole of the town and making it better. Mm-hmm. So sometimes things happen that you personally don't want in your town, but all of your town may want that. So you have to take a step back and look at the big picture.
Now, another question I would have for Travis too, and Zim didn't really address it, and nor is that really the place to address it. And I don't know, and maybe Travis does own this property, but he can't permit a power pole on a property he doesn't own. If he's leasing it, then he needs written permission from the owners. Just having said that, I'm sure he probably has all that.
I'm sure he does.
I'm sure he does. I just wanted to kind of help Travis with that and not delay him some more.
But I'm going to be honest with y'all. I personally wouldn't be putting my money into Otter Creek. If this is the attitude, there's plenty of nice surrounding towns around there.
Yeah. Why does Tubetown have to be close to what the hills are close to Lynette and Crook?
I mean, if Otter Creek
it's a virtual town anyway.
Doesn't want the help,
you can put it anywhere.
And doesn't want any extra revenues that could be raised or things like that, I would take my money somewhere else.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yep, I agree with that.
I mean,
yeah.
I know everybody enjoys drama and all these things, but I don't. I enjoy smiles, laughter, and having fun. And I think you can create something great in another place without all that extra drama.
I think he has some good ideas. I think there'll be other permits he'll need to. I think you need some type of health certificate permit if you're going to be selling food. But honestly, Travis, I would consider, and I don't know all the ramifications of new rules, but I would keep everything mobile. If you just go with the generator plan, how long are you going to be there? A couple hours a day, 3 hours a day? If you're completely mobile, if you're all up on wheels, well, they got quiet ones. And the neighbors are not right on top of that property. The neighbors are a couple of parcels over, if it's that corner property up on 24. There's a little house there.
You have two neighbors right there.
Yeah, the right side and the left side.
It's all pretty tight.
Yeah, that's a small parcel too. I'm not picturing all of what he described going on that property, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's hard for me
It's a tight parcel.
Picture all of that going on there. I think it's a grand idea.
Yeah, I think he's got an idea.
I don't know, the way Otter Creek doesn't welcome new and good things.
They make everything difficult.
It's just, to me, it's like, oh, well, take my money somewhere else. I would rather be where I'm appreciated type of attitude. So it's upsetting to me because it's, once again, you get the same feeling that we got with trying to do good stuff in the town, where it's almost like, shut down the outsiders, shut down the growth, shut down the good, new, positive ideas. And it's not a good feeling to live somewhere. And I know Travis doesn't live there, but to even be pouring your heart out into a community that is slapping you in the face and not welcoming you there, it's not a good feeling.
It's not.
So I do not miss that feeling whatsoever. It gets your anxiety heightened. Like I said, when I was watching the video, it was a little bit of PTSD coming back.
I mean, when you go in there thinking it's going to be a simple process, I'll get you whatever you need.
And you're doing something good for the town.
You're energized, you want to get moving, you want to get going, and he wastes your time. Yeah. Now he's going to cost you a whole bunch of money when it's unnecessary.
It's like you're getting squashed. You're getting squashed. And it's not a good feeling.
And I feel sorry for Travis in a way, because this is probably not the end of it. He's going to go get the drawings and come back, and then it's going to be something else. Then it's going to be something else, and then something else.
I would just take my plan somewhere else.
Yeah, so
but that's just me.
That's our recommendation. That's what we would do.
Because I am somewhere else, and I like it here.
Yeah, so, but... yeah, I think I've said everything I want to say.
I don't again know that anything shady is going on with the things Zim is saying.
Make sure that Zim provides everything you're going to need for your project from head to toe, A to Z, and put it on a piece of paper. Make him even sign it, that these are the new rules and this is the ordinance that backs what I'm saying. He can't just willy-nilly start pulling stuff out of his backside and making a rule out of it.
I'm sure with the new lawyer, Megan, there, that if there was anything out of the way, she would have interjected and everything will be on board.
Yes.
But you definitely want to see the stuff. A lot of the rules have changed.
Yeah.
Things are not as easy as they once were in
No.
that town.
When they cut the interlocal agreement, that gives basically one man.
It changed.
Zim all the say. In a way, as long as the board is voting with him, as far as new rules for permitting and zoning. With an old zoning compliance letter, all you had to be was zoned for commercial to do commercial work, and then they sign the permission, and then you go to the county. Now, what was good about that was the county just really didn't dive into all of it. The compliance letter says that Otter Creek's okay with it, so they're like, okay, they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. So it was really easy to do. But when the interlocal agreement was severed, I don't know that people realize what changed. I did, because most of the town's not trying to get permits. But did everybody close out their permits? Is Tina and Brian, did they ever get their permit closed, and do they have engineered drawings? That would be a question I would have.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when they started building their garage and stuff, if they needed the engineered drawings or
did they
because that didn't all happen under me.
Right.
And I know part of it probably happened under Russell, and perhaps part of it happened under Zim.
So if the
I'm
rules
not really
changed
sure.
in between that time, we can't speak to, but that would be a question I'd have.
Because outside of them, I don't know that anybody else
don't think
has
anybody else-
done anything that needed
A permit.
I know people have put up fences, but from what I'm aware of, you didn't need the permits for the fencing.
But if he stayed completely mobile and got some tactical quiet generators, like those Honda generators, that's all the power you need. You're just looking for, like, to run an ice machine or water machine or something, like 20 amps or less, 30 amps or less. You can get that off of those quiet generators, and they're very quiet. You can set them right outside, 100 feet away, you can't hear them. So I would go that route, and I don't think, now, don't quote me if I'm wrong, I don't think Zim can do anything about if you're completely mobile and you're not having to do a permit for anything. The health would be for the food vending, but that's not him. That's the state. So that's health department at the county, but it's a state organization that governs that. I really don't think he'd have any say. As long as you're not drawing water or dispensing water under the ground, or buying power, and you're providing your own, I don't think there's any say. You could also, this might be an option too. You're so close to those houses, you could run an extension cord over. Maybe toss them some money, have an agreement with them, and run a cord over to run your little business, because you're not going to be there all night. You're just going to be there for a few hours during the day, right? Or 8 hours or 3 hours or something. But these are just ideas I'm throwing at you, and you wouldn't have to deal with this or the expense of getting engineered drawings. Here's another thing with the engineers. It's going to be hard to get the engineers to want to do the project. It's not big enough, because we heard some of that happening. We were looking into it at one point, looking at retention ponds for Shady Oaks.
Well, there wasn't a lot of companies to choose from.
There's not a lot to choose from.
And there was, most of them don't want to come to Otter Creek.
Right. Another one is they don't want to deal with Otter Creek. Another one is they don't really want to deal with Levy County. And another one is there's just not many of them doing it, and they're piled up with work. And so they're just doing the bigger projects that people are throwing money at them for. So when Zim got his permit, his engineered drawings for his campground, he's throwing money at them. He's going to the top and throwing a whole bunch of money at him. I even told him, and I'll share this with you, he said he had almost, by the time he finishes the park, I don't know if he's finished the other side or not, but his total cost with drawings and all the extensions on the building and the concrete he poured and the new building, and I think he put a well on the property. I'm not even sure how he did that, but nobody's questioning that. But all the cost total with the entire park, when he's completely finished, he's about $1 million in. I said, I question that, because I don't think you're ever going to make that back. Not in your lifetime. Not in, let's say, 20 years. You're not going to make that money back. I don't think. Now, I can take 40 sites or 25 sites and multiply it times the rent, and then deduct his expenses, what I think they might be. I know what the electric costs and all that, and the taxes and all that. And you can kind of get a good idea having a campground.
Where are you going with all this?
I'm just saying I didn't think that was a smart business decision. Now, hey, he might make it work, but I think it's going to take a long time for the dividend to pay itself.
Well, that's neither here nor there. What
True.
we're talking
That's
about,
my personal
so
opinion. That's just me.
Brett's driving on the wrong side of the road
the,
again.
the squirrel I'm chasing. That's a thing of mine. I'm a business guy, and it's got to make sense.
To you, everybody has their own mindset of whatever.
Well,
So you
there's
can't-
money you put into a business, and there's reasonable expectation of profit.
I haven't even had dinner tonight, so I don't want to hear all
So
this.
you're hangry, but I don't think I'm wrong. But
Most
hey,
men don't.
look, stay on point. Anyway, so I think Travis has his work cut out for him. I think he saw a snippet of what he's going to run into, and I don't know why it has to be so difficult. Zim should be more forthcoming what all the rules are. He should have it in writing. Here's a handout. There should be a pre-printed thing that's ready to do a zoning and permitting process, but I don't think they have the process in writing where they can just hand it. And that's how it needs to be. It needs to be like, here's the rules, not just here's one. Oh, I'm gonna pull this rule out too, and then you're gonna need this one. That's not how you run. That's not how you professionally run a town, a business, or anything. So he needs to get. And I'm sure there's a lot of discussion about this going to be happening over the coming days, and he's going to get everything in order, and the lawyer's going to get something, if it ain't already in the ordinances, get something going. So I'm sure they'll get it all squared away, but man, I had PTSD watching that, what Travis was up against and what the reaction of the board was.
Well, I'm pretty sure on both ends that everything is going to be done above board because, again, there's a lot of eyes on the situation and everything needs to be above board. So I'm pretty sure they're going to produce whatever documents need to be produced. And I know that Travis is going to do everything correctly. He's motivated, he's ambitious, and he's going to do things the right way. And if it doesn't turn out that this is going to happen in Otter Creek, I wouldn't be surprised if it's done at a different location. And you know what? It'll get the same full support by all the people in a different location if that's the case.
Correct.
So I have full faith that everything will turn out exactly as it should.
Yeah, I wish Travis all the best on his endeavors. If it doesn't work here, don't be hung up on having to put it in Otter Creek.
Right.
Put it somewhere else.
If there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah.
So I think everything is just going to be just fine. Just fine. There's lots of support and a lot of people who want good stuff.
Yeah, I just hope that the new process in Otter Creek doesn't make it cost prohibitive to do business there.
Right.
Like if it costs so much, is it worth it? Like for us, the retention ponds weren't worth it.
I would like to see in the future a few things in Otter Creek change for the better. One of which is I would love to see that people have voices and are properly informed of things. Because things only work best when everybody works together. So I do hope that a few things change there.
Well, anyway, we'll wrap this up so we can get
But
something
do
to
I
eat.
miss any of it? No! All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with us. I definitely got to eat because I'm getting
edgy.
A little edgy.
But we'll take care of Madam Mayor.
So love you guys.
That's
Thanks for
my
hanging
mayor.
out and continue to just spread positive vibes. Say prayers for everybody involved because nobody needs all this extra stress and anxiety in their lives.
What a mess. So, life's too short.
Peace out.
Love you guys.
Baby.